Hello, darling. Tonight's story, as well as the earlier story and Erlenmeyer Tunnel, are rooted in my many years working for a major corporation. As it usually goes with such things, my time there was a mixture of good and bad experiences, impressive colleagues who I respected greatly, but also some sour apples who I did not. I found myself continually impressed by our young CEO and wondering how someone born with the proverbial silver spoon, who had never known financial strife, feared hunger or the loss of a home, or been desperate to find work, was so consistently empathetic to the struggles of those who did. I suppose tonight's story is my dream about how such a thing might come about and, in a way, my love letter to that part of my life which I find myself missing a great deal. Please join me for this speculative exploration of The Secret Vault. I worked for a bank for more than a dozen years. The bank was the better part of 2 centuries old, one of the oldest institutions in this part of the country. The young chief executive was the singular descendant of all the powerful families that had come together to create our community. The builders of downtown, the railroad barons, the founders of the university, the patrons who started the hospital, and other families as well, families with smaller fortunes, but whose names nonetheless dotted landmarks across town. All of their legacies had come together in this one man who looked out from his office atop the highest building in our part of the world, staring out to the west like a king surveying an inherited kingdom and the borderlands he would someday claim. He was a surprisingly humble man, understanding, aware of what people endure, far more than his elevated station gave him any business being. I've often resented my place as a subordinate, but I never minded working for him. Men with 1/10 of his wealth and influence would pretend not to see me when they passed me by, while he always smiled and remembered my name. Other banks collapsed during the Civil War or the Depression or during any number of recessions or disasters. The bank I worked for, however, remained strong and scandal-free. Contrast with this, one of my own cousins married a much older man who owned a bank, expressly for his wealth. She lived like a queen for many years, hobnobbing with celebrities and enjoying being spoiled. That is, until her husband's countless financial abuses caught up with him. Then he died, conveniently for him, less so for her, and left her with nothing. Our choices always catch up with us. As a cynic who was often disappointed by what I saw in the halls of power, the scions of the CEO's family surprised me with their humanity. Were they simply good people who kept raising more generations of good people? What were the odds that such a tradition could be maintained in the face of their wealth and power, with all its temptations? It begged belief that not one scoundrel had married in and ruined their dynamic, and not one bad seed had taken the crown along the way. It was unlikely, bordering on the impossible. The scrutiny of the public, the risks to the business, or even the loss of one's own reputation, are not enough to keep the wealthy and powerful honest, not over such a long time. My cousin's story proves that, and there are additional examples for all of us to see, beyond counting. Yet I saw this family's good nature play out again and again. While other banks would find any excuse to introduce a new fee or a confusing or risky product, our bank would continually decline to follow, even though doing so surely affected the bottom line. And yet it never seemed to. Lesser men within the company would push the family toward these ends, but time and again they would say no, that we had enough, and that the wealth would come if we simply did right by people. It was shocking. My job there had nothing to do with ledgers or the work of the treasurer. I knew nothing about the vaults or how the institution protected its assets. I did learn a few things about asset management along the way, like how surprisingly little money is kept by a neighborhood branch, and so it seemed to me the central coffers of a large bank, wherever they are, must hold incredible wealth. I imagined that somewhere in the office complex where I worked, there must be a nondescript room or hall with one highly secured door. If one could get beyond that door, then perhaps there's what appears an empty office, or unlisted conference room, or even a storage closet. But hidden somewhere therein lies a panel with an intricate series of combination locks. Clearing them successfully opens a trap door. Failure to clear them within an allotted time means certain capture and arrest, perhaps interrogation, or worse. Beyond waits a further series of trapdoors and vaults, each with its own locks, leading further underground. I see dark spaces, lit by a single overhead light, feeling almost like the inside of an elevator car. Lasers abound to detect movement. Myriad cameras watch every movement with their unblinking red eyes. This is a space that few know about, and even fewer will ever see. Eventually, the final trapdoor leads to a chamber that looks more like a museum. The air is always cold here, constantly circulated and cleared of contaminants by a state-of-the-art filtration system. The humidity is low, and the room is in near darkness until someone enters. Even then, only the dimmest lights come on. Here, in this windowless place, among mahogany wall panels and plush green carpet, are masterpieces. Giant Olympians missing their heads and arms, Renaissance paintings, maps from the Age of Discovery mounted behind glass, and priceless books from around the world written by scholars and monks hundreds of years ago. Through a round vault door is a similar room, but within it are even more spectacular finds. The Just Judges by Van Eyck hangs on a wall within, behind glass and lasers both. Raphael's portrait of a young man adorns the opposite wall. To the art world these are lost, though certain governments know they are here. These works were liberated from Germany during the war and given to the Americans illegally, as thanks for a job well done. It's been whispered that the Irish crown jewels are here, or used to be, though this is a complete lie. There were similar stories told about the Florentine diamond, part of Austria's royal collection, though it was recently found in a safe deposit box up in Canada. There are many successive rooms of such treasures, alleged relics of saints, pieces of the Amber Room, and even a purported copy of Love's Labour's Won, a lost play of Shakespeare's, though this item awaits appraisal. They wait here in the dark, silent, secret, in keeping for a day of utter ruin, perhaps a world financial collapse, a time when money as we think of it might lose all power. In such an era, it's difficult to imagine what sorts of objects would still command value. What could one trade for medicine, food, transportation, or security in such a world? What form would wealth take in a world without money? But the men and women who have built this place have done a fine job in hedging their bets. Precious stones and metals, bundles of cash from around the globe, and treasures from across the ages. Surely something here could buy whatever one needed, even if it all went to hell tomorrow. None of these items, however, can compare to what waits in the final chamber. In the last vault, the deepest below ground, behind the most puzzles and locks, is a small wooden box on a column-style pedestal. The box is unlocked. Within it is a handwritten letter translated into English, Spanish, and French, along with a simple handmade doll crafted from dried flowers and grasses. Strings are tied around the torso of the doll, from which various beads, teeth, shells, and bits of feather hang. The letter was transcribed by a Catholic missionary as spoken to him by a Native American chieftain in his people's language. The tribe was in the midst of being relocated from the land where my town now sits to a distant reservation site, despite the best efforts of one of my boss's powerful ancestors to stop it. The letter was addressed to that ancestor and his family, who would soon go on to found the bank that their family still owns and for whom I worked. The English translation of the letter reads as follows. Our people thank your family for the attempt to do a great kindness by us. Though it was not successful, we wish to repay your continued efforts on our behalf. This totem has belonged to our people for a long time, but we have rarely had occasion to use it, as material acquisition is seldom of benefit to us. Instead, we offer it to you. The medicine in this totem will call wealth to you, and ever greater wealth to your descendants, but on one condition. You must ever be good stewards of our land, and protectors of the people who dwell on it. This is a price that is never fully paid, and which you must continue to pay for all time. Choose otherwise, and the Spirit will reject you, and you shall never regain its favor. Live righteously, and the world is yours. Perhaps each new president of the bank is entrusted with this secret as he or she reaches maturity, sharing it with no one until such time as his or her own successor prepares to take over. Surely at least some of them laugh when told the secret, unbelieving, and then spend their apprenticeship witnessing the truth of the straw doll's power. We let people think these vaults are filled with nothing but gold bars, the retiring president might say to the new one, or diamonds, whatever. And we do have such things, but this, and perhaps here the elder gently strokes the door with aged, grateful fingers. This is worth more than any precious stone or metal. It is literally the blessing of the land, manna from heaven, a gift from the gods of the plains, who, even now, whether we recognize them or not, hold dominion here. What greater treasure could we possess than their favor? So the little doll rests in the dark, deep underground, under locks and lasers, where thieves and even bombs cannot reach it, where the greed of governments cannot touch it, and the blessings of popes and prophets and televangelists cannot equal it. And to whom much has been given, even more is asked. The gods are not fooled by mere philanthropy, intended to launder the dirty reputations and consciences of the rich. No, they demand proper stewardship, as the tribe would have wanted it. Hence the hospitals, the colleges, the homes for the aged and the orphaned, the reluctance to take and take and take. Here, in this place, greed has been leashed, if not tamed, because nothing else will satisfy, and the watch never ends. It must be a heavy burden for the young CEO, surveying his domain from his high-rise office in the palatial tower that wealth has built, knowing that he's watched and weighed not only by customers or investors, but by unseen deities, things which his own religion says nothing of and cannot explain. What strange dreams that must give him at times, and fear as well. But also, conversely, what supreme satisfaction. For every successful year means he has passed the test anew, and seldom in life do any of us receive such affirmation. Those who come after him will build higher and higher, looking down across a larger and larger realm as the company, and therefore its responsibility, forever expands. Perhaps some day they'll build high enough to meet the gods of the plains. Men and women in suits will sit across oak conference tables from beings in feathered headdress. Maybe that's when the entire history of the company will come under audit, its ledgers seen by infallible examiners, and the souls of pioneers and bankers and institutions alike shall be brought to account for all they have done. I realize that such a romantic answer to the question of why does this family remain so grounded and empathetic despite their wealth and influence is probably unnecessary, and even perhaps a pessimistic take on human nature. Maybe people are able to be good simply out of their own innate goodness. Still, if this is a form of cynicism, I will ask you to let me keep it. I would like to think that there's still some magic left in this world, and if kindness and goodness, sharing and sacrifice are helped along by such magic, then I wouldn't consider that such a terrible thing. Until next time, don't forget me. N'est-ce pas?